The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
Your worst nightmare. They've been banging on shit. Open up the door. I just told us to open. We're gonna come in. I'll be back.
We'll be back. Oh my, all that caught on camera. That terrifying trio dressed in Halloween masks tormenting a family, allegedly trying to break into their home. These suspects are still on the loose this morning. We'll talk about it. And in just a couple hours from now, the closing arguments are expected to happen in the rape trial of Irish firefighter Terence Crosbie. So will the jury be more swayed by the testimony or by the science? Plus, will Diddy get a pardon from President Trump? Our power panel weighs in on the chances of the music mogul being freed. Also this hour, cameras allowed in the courtroom. So how will that affect former NFL quarterback Mark Sanchez's upcoming trial? It's all next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Wednesday morning to you and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. Are you ready for some coffee and some court? It is that time. We got a great show planned with great guests. Grab that cup of coffee right now. It's time for my opening statement. She is even worse than we realized. The new Netflix doc, The Perfect Neighbor, comes with the receipts. Tons of body camera footage showing us just how rotten Susan Lawrence really is. We covered her manslaughter trial here at Court TV for the shooting death of Ajika A.J. Owens. The question for the jury was whether the shooting was reasonable under the circumstances. It certainly wasn't. It was criminal. But what's more, after watching that documentary, I am convinced that rotten Susan Lawrence wanted it to happen. Because she was especially nasty to A.J. and to her children long before the shooting incident. The documentary reported her even yelling racial slurs at the children. Shame on her. You can't tell me that Susan Lawrence didn't bait A.J. Owens into coming to her house that day over her son's missing iPad. What a sinister, sickening, sorry excuse for a human being Susan Lawrence is. This case should have been charged as a murder case. Lawrence's nasty history substantiates that. This was not an isolated incident. This was a setup. That is my very strong opinion. She took that innocent young mother's life and deprived her 4 beautiful kids of growing up without their mom. May God bless them and comfort them as they live without A.J. Owens. And thankfully, rotten Susan Lawrence is locked up in prison now. And I sure hope that someone throws away the key. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
Well, I want to be clear about this. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you do for a living. I don't care where you live. If you come into our city, commit violence, we will use all the tools at our disposal to hold you accountable.
All right, in Indiana, we've got a pretrial conference for Mark Sanchez's assault case expected to happen at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to talk more about his case and cameras in his trial coming up this morning on this show. In Florida, we've got opening statements set to happen in the murder trial for defendant Alicia Andrews. This woman is accused in the ambush shooting of rapper Julio Folio. Andrews is one of 5 suspects charged. This is going to get underway at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. In Massachusetts, we've got closing arguments expected today in the Irish Firefighter Rape Trial for defendant Terence Crosbie. That is our top story. Now, the jury will soon be deciding his fate, and it could come down to the testimony versus the forensic science. So the jurors got to hear Crosbie's side of the story. He testified in his own defense on Tuesday. This guy's on trial for a second time here in America, even though he's a citizen of the country of Ireland. Dublin, to be precise, is where he lives. He's on trial here because he came to town to march in a parade. And during the time that he was here, he's accused of raping a woman at a Boston hotel. Now, the accuser testified earlier in the trial. He denied the allegations. Let's take a listen to some of his testimony. Here we go.
He was walking around the room, gathering her clothes and rummaging, looking for her belongings.
Did you look at her?
We're out. I couldn't. I didn't try anyway.
Did you touch her?
I didn't.
Did you have any physical contact with her?
I didn't.
You specifically asked them, can you specify what that means exactly in the legal terms of rape? Is she saying someone pinned her down on the bed and had sex with her?
Only that.
Given you any information beyond the fact that there was a sexual assault alleged, right?
Yes.
And so it was your words, your specific words, asking if she was saying that someone pinned her down on the bed and had sex with her,
Yes,
right?
we asked him.
Crosbie's charged with 1 count of rape, and he's facing up to 20 years in prison if he's convicted. So who will the jury believe, him or his accuser? Let's bring in our legal eagles. Joining us this morning, criminal defense and civil rights attorney Kesia Early, and civil attorney, also celebrity attorney. We saw him lead the case for Johnny Depp, Ben Chew. Good morning to you both. All right, so let's start with the defendant, and then we're going to work backwards in our conversation. We're going to get to the accuser. But since he was the most recent one to testify, I want to ask you both how you think he did. Kesia, would you start us off, please?
Absolutely, and good morning, Julie. I do a lot of sexual battery cases, and I always say my sexual battery cases are much harder than my murder cases because the presumption is of guilt, and then you have to kind of convince the jury that our client didn't do it. And just listening to his testimony, watching his demeanor, and hearing how he's answering the questions straightforward, I have to say he did better than I expected, simply because he came across credible. And we know that this case is littered with reasonable doubt. We have the fact that the victim was inebriated, heavily intoxicated, and her truth, unfortunately, is not 100% reliable. And in cases of sexual assault, credibility is key. So in this case, it's going to boil down to the DNA, to the science. And even the science is inconclusive. When you hear this terminology of inconclusive, multiple contributors, or you cannot tell how long it got there or how it got there, that's transfer DNA. That's your reasonable doubt. So unfortunately, in this case, sometimes the alleged victim is not always the victim based on the circumstances.
Kesia, thank you for all of that. Ben Chew, want to go to you next. Same question, please. How did you think this defendant fared on the stand?
Good morning, Julie. Good to be with you. I agree with Kesia. I think he came across very well. He seems very straightforward. He's got the benefit of being a firefighter and a paramedic, which is it's going to be looked on favorably by the jury, that his job is to take care of people in precarious situations. I do think that clip that you showed from the cross-examination was effective in the sense that he appeared to have details that weren't related to him, that were consistent with her claims. But overall, I agree with Kesia that we likely are looking for at least one juror to find some reasonable doubt here, as happened in the first trial.
You're exactly right, Ben. First trial, for anybody who missed it, there was a mistrial. So this is trial number 2. The jury doesn't know that, but we know that. Thank you for the mention, Ben. So for the reasons that Ben and Kesia stated, this case becomes really tough. I was just saying to my colleagues, I see why this one is at trial. I see why, because of the issues you both are raising. Let's turn to the accuser's testimony. I have a clip. This is from her direct examination. Here we go.
I woke up to somebody on top of me, inside of me, in his penis in my vagina, on top of me, telling me You like this. He couldn't give this to you. I'll give it to you. He's a loser. I was focusing on getting out. I was focusing on getting to safety.
Okay, Casey, thinking back to the accuser on the stand, your thoughts on how she fared up there?
Well, oftentimes when we have accusers, we know that they're going to be emotional. So I usually address that in my voir dire, and I want to make sure that the jury is not swayed by emotion because it puts us at a disadvantage and it's not fair. So obviously she was very emotional, but again, she did not describe the basics, didn't know his name. And if he is completely naked, why didn't you describe any marks, whether there were tattoos or hair on his chest, just a simple. And when she was challenged on cross-examination, she just kept saying, I just want to get out of there. Well, that's not sufficient because most of my cases were won simply because the alleged victim could not describe the basic, whether or not he had hair on his chest or was a bare chest. That's something that you can remember. And then also when she's claimed that she was running out of the hotel and then later clarified, well, I walked out because the surveillance cameras did not corroborate her initial statement. So again, I know it's always hard for a victim, a true victim, to testify, to come forward. But again, in this case, it's just littered with reasonable doubt. And I would argue that in my closing argument.
And you are a defense attorney, a very good defense attorney for all those reasons you're giving us, Casey. Thank you for that. Ben Chu, I want your opinion on how you think the victim did, how she came across to the jury.
Well, Julie, I do think that the emotion really can't be blocked out of the jurors' minds, despite whatever instruction the judge gives. But I think that a jury could conclude that something traumatic happened to her that caused this, what appears to be very real emotion, but it wasn't a rape by the defendant. So I think, again, you've got reasonable doubt here and a very tragic situation.
Appreciate it, Ben. So I'm going to take the position, for the sake of our discussion, of this accuser. And I was thinking a lot about this when I woke up this morning and was preparing for the show. To go through, and I would encourage anyone who is entirely swayed by just the science, because I saw a lot of comments on social media saying, oh, no DNA, well, must be not guilty. And I want to kind of take a moment to go into law professor mode for a second here. That is not fatal to the case, and Ben and Casey know this, that testimonial evidence can be given every much the same amount of weight as scientific evidence. The jury's going to decide what amount of weight to give what based on what they're hearing, and we see really good attorneys attack science all the time. So it doesn't mean that we suddenly discount her claims because the test didn't produce what one might expect it to produce based on her account. I keep thinking, this woman, she's an attorney. She's not in civil court. She's not getting damages here, and she's putting herself through this a second time. The trauma for someone who is allegedly a victim of rape to do this again, to me, there's absolutely no way she could have made this up. No way. I believe her. That's me. And so I wanted to just kind of bring up the science and the testimony as our next talking point for Ben and Casey, because it generated a big discussion in our newsroom where I think non-lawyers may sometimes think, oh, the science must get more weight. Casey, do you ever run into that in practice?
I did, and this case reminds me of a case that I had where my client was charged of a sexual assault, and the alleged victim on the stand was absolutely emotional, but there was no other conclusive scientific evidence. So my argument to the jury was, I do believe something happened to her. What I don't believe is that my client was the one that committed this trauma against the alleged victim in this case. And I think that this is the case here. I do believe something happened, and I do believe that she was violated. What I don't believe is that the person that she's accusing is the person that committed the act, similar to my case in chief. And thankfully, my client was found not guilty because we all believe something happened. The emotion was too raw. And even when she was trying to recall what occurred on the stand, it was believable. But again, we want to know that a crime was committed, but my client wasn't the one that committed the crime.
So you're saying it's someone else is what you're thinking. This reminds you of a kind of the Saudi defense, as we call it, the some other dude did it defense that we say. Tell me if this changes your mind, Casey. I just learned about this this morning. So apparently after the incident, the parade was supposed to happen the next day, the day after the incident in question. And this guy came to America to walk in that parade. When police apprehend him at the airport, Ben, I'm going to come to you on the other side of this. Police get him at the airport and they say, where are you going? You know, why are you leaving so fast? We know you were at the hotel. We know where you were staying. Why in the world did you leave so suddenly? And they get the ID because of the roommate, right? He's friends with this guy named Liam who did have the consensual sex with the accuser. And his answer is, I saw the door open at the hotel and it frightened me. So that's why I packed up and went to take off. Ben Chu, what do you think? What do those actions say about Mr. Crosbie?
Julie, I'm so glad you raised that. I think that was really the most incriminating thing. That's not a plausible explanation for why he would cut short what obviously is a big trip for him, and his desire to go and march in the parade. For him to leave prematurely like this, he really had no explanation. You would have expected him to say, one of my children was sick, my wife, requested that I come home because there was some crisis at home, but that wasn't the case. And so if I were the prosecution, I would hammer this home again and again and again, as with the details about the woman being pinned down, because that's something that he couldn't have possibly known unless he'd actually done it.
Excellent point. Ben Chu, Casey Early, great discussion. We'll leave it here for now. This case is going to resume at 9 a.m. and we're going to continue following it, as today we could have a verdict. Coming up next, though, here on Opening Statements, this is what we've got.
He says he feels he has more to give. I think we need to let him have a little transition, have some downtime.
Will Diddy get a presidential pardon? Our power panel weighs in. Plus, we're spotlighting former NFL quarterback Mark Sanchez's recent criminal case. The judge will be letting the trial be filmed. So we'll talk about how the cameras could play into case strategy.
The Court TV podcast will return.
He would punch her, choke her, drag her, slap her in the mouth. I saw him kick her, punch her in the stomach.
Why did you try to keep the person who abused you happy?
Because when he was happy, I was safe.
What was your understanding of where the Molotov cocktail was found by law enforcement?
In the driver's seat.
Again and again, that criminal enterprise serviced the defendant's every desire through a methodical pattern of violence, coercion, and manipulation.
He is innocent. He sits there innocent. Return him to his family, who have been waiting for him.
We had a wonderful jury. They listened to every word, and they got the situation right, or certainly right enough.
From his criminal trial to sentencing earlier this month, Sean Diddy Combs has always been a hot topic of conversation, but now he finds himself back trending after reports are pointing to a potential presidential pardon. But the White House is saying not so fast. Earlier this week, TMZ reported that a high-ranking White House official confirmed to them that President Trump is considering commutation for Combs, even stating that the president could set Diddy free as early as this week. But the White House is pushing back against that reporting, saying in a statement Tuesday that there is zero truth to a possible pardon by the president for Diddy at this time. So the first question for our power panel, we're backing up a second, is Diddy deserving of a presidential pardon? Let's bring in our guests. Still with me, celebrity attorney Ben Chu, and want to welcome in the editor-in-chief of the Hip Hop Inquirer. He covered Diddy's trial start to finish, Dennis Byron. Good morning to you both. All right, Dennis, would you start us off, please? What do you think? Is Diddy deserving of this?
I would say absolutely. And I'll say that because when we went in, we thought that there was going to be a likely conviction of RICO, sex trafficking, and related charges. However, after watching all the evidence, listening to the witnesses, and hearing the conclusion, it was clear that he was overcharged. President Trump in May of 2018 pardoned posthumous Jack Johnson on the Mann Act. And it was literally towards I guess the middle of his term. I think it's not unlikely that he would do this. And the other part of this is TMZ usually have good sources, so I don't think that this is far from the truth.
Oh, that's another good point, too. Dennis, thank you for all that. Ben Chu, I want to turn to you. What do you think? Is Diddy deserving of a presidential pardon?
Julie, I think, as Dennis referenced, this was a compromise verdict. So I think in that sense, I think that a pardon may not be justified, but I have a very strong opinion on whether there will be a pardon, which I anticipate is your next question.
Yes, my friend. Well, let's get to it. So in August, we know during an interview with Newsmax, President Trump was asked about potentially pardoning Diddy. So here's what he had to say. He said, quote, "I was very friendly with him. I got along with him great, seemed like a nice guy. I didn't know him well, but when I ran for office, he was very hostile. When you knew someone and you were fine, and then you run for office and he made some terrible statements. So I don't know, it's more difficult. It makes it more, I'm being honest, it makes it more difficult to do." Fair enough. All right, so let's get to those predictions. Our next question for our power panel guest. Do you believe that a pardon will happen? Ben Chu, would you start us off, please?
2 words. George Santos. As you know, President Trump very recently commuted the sentence of George Santos, who had only served 3 months out of a 7-year sentence. This is something, if passed as prologue, that President Trump very much likes to do. He refers to himself as the chief law enforcement officer of the land. He likes to exercise that power. I would bet you, I'm not a betting person, but I would bet you a chicken dinner that he will pardon Diddy.
I like the rationale you're putting forth here, Ben. George Santos, just a reminder, this is the disgraced congressman, pleaded to wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. So those were his crimes, got the pardon. Also pardoned the Chrisleys, the reality couple, Todd and Julie Chrisley, gave them pardons, and he pardoned roughly 1,500 criminal defendants in connection with the attack on the Capitol, the January 6th attack. So those are some of the past pardons. Dennis Byron, what's your prediction for the future for Diddy?
I predict that I will be buying Mr. Chu chicken dinner at Sylvia's restaurant in Harlem. It will definitely, I believe it will definitely happen. The timing is, that's the only thing I'm uncertain. It may happen this week. It may happen in a couple of months. But I think that because Diddy had he had a friendship with Mr. Trump. That friendship was pretty strong. You would see him at some of Diddy's events. I don't think President Trump will have a grudge, while Diddy did say some not so favorable words against the president, but I think I don't think he'll have a long grudge on dealing with Diddy. I think he'll get a pardon.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, he even was referencing recently how, he and Marco Rubio in the past, running against, each other within the party. And then now look at them now. So, he seems to be able to move on if there was a little grudge at some point during the election. So this is interesting. Friends at home, tweet us. Let us know what you think about this, if you think that Diddy will be pardoned. We're thinking about the offenses. These, in the grand scheme of federal charges and all the things that the federal government can bring, what he was convicted of, low-level prostitution offenses. I want to emphasize that. Dennis, you know this well from being in the courtroom day in and day out. I had a conversation yesterday, with some friends just discussing the case, and I think for people who didn't see it, didn't watch it, weren't necessarily reviewing the evidence, but just were hearing reports on, TikTok or wherever, I think there's still some strong misconceptions about what the case was about. Do you agree?
I do. Even looking at the opening, I mean, a lot of those things stuck with people as far as alleged involvement with children, and but I think what really sticking heavy is the Cassie video. And a lot of people don't realize that he actually wasn't convicted of that, but that was a powerful tool that the prosecution used to argue their case. So I think, while it was I'm not making no light of the fact that Cassie was assaulted, abused, and very violently. I think that's why a lot of people don't want Mr. Combs to get out right away.
Right. I think you're exactly right. That video was dreadful, and there's been so much support for Cassie, rightfully so, because of that. And legally, Ben Chu, I mean, it's tough when you have a client on trial, but I mean, that was not what he was being prosecuted for. It came into the prosecution, as you know. But Ben, do you think that largely has affected the public opinion for him, probably for good?
I definitely do. And I thought at the time that would be a good appellate issue if he were in fact convicted, as he was on some of the counts, because he wasn't being charged for that. And to allow that video in, the jury can't unsee that. And despite whatever the instructions were, they're going to have that perception. So I think you and Dennis are exactly right. That's indelible. And I think it was arguably overly prejudicial, more prejudicial than it was probative of what he was actually charged for.
Yeah, really great points. I have to say the defense team did a fine job in embracing it, acknowledging it. They didn't run from it. They acknowledged it was wrong. He was wrong on every level for what he did. So I think they earned some credibility with the jury. We'll see what happens next. We'll stand by. It's always a treat to have you wonderful gentlemen on the show. Ben Chu, Dennis Byron, thank you both so much. I have to let you both go. We'll see you soon, I hope. We'll hit a break. When we come back, we're going to turn to Mark Sanchez's case in Indiana. So guess what? The judge is allowing cameras in. We'll talk about how that's going to affect things. Plus, we have some terrifying video to show you that's been going viral. 3 people dressed up in Halloween attire, allegedly trying to break into a family's home. Stay with us.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
Welcome back. Our spotlight this morning turns on a case in Indiana where a pretrial hearing for Mark Sanchez is set to happen today. The former NFL quarterback, now broadcaster, is also a defendant and is being accused of being intoxicated and brutally assaulting a 69-year-old truck driver over a parking spot. Now, the court docket indicates that the judge will be allowing cameras to broadcast his December 11th trial. Now, the cameras in the courtroom will then open up lots of questions for us to talk about, like the optics in the courtroom, the trial strategies, and should Mark Sanchez just negotiate a plea deal? Let's bring in our guests and talk about it. Still with me, criminal defense and civil rights attorney Casey Early. I want to welcome in jury consultant and human behavior expert Susan Constantine. Good morning to you, ladies. All right, so let's start with the optics, and then we're going to get to should he plead. So, Susan, optics, this is what you do. Tell me what you're thinking when you hear that this trial for this broadcaster, former NFL player, is going to be broadcast for the world to see.
Well, you and I know that optics mean everything. It's called enclothed cognition. People will judge you based on the way you look. So they have an image of who they've seen on television. And, he's a superstar. He dresses quite flashy. And so now he's in court, and we are now looking at a criminal case. So now kind of like a game changer here. So I have to decide when I'm working with a client, what image do I want to project? So in this case, oftentimes we see defendants dressing them in sweaters and so forth to kind of soften them up. In this case, I don't want that. What I want is a very polished yet attractive look, because he's an attractive guy. So I want to connect with that jury on his likability based on also his appearance. So I want to create more of a muted, polished look. So I'm going to be selecting suits for him that are in the light gray or medium gray. Even charcoal, as long as it's paired with softer colors. So muted violets, muted burgundies, muted sage greens. I'm talking about like in ties colors. So I'm going to be creating what I call a wardrobe for every single day he's in trial. And I want to create a theme. So anything that is less intimidating, no power looks, no reds and with blacks and whites. I don't want any power look, even too darker colors. I don't want anything that's a deep navy. I don't want a dark charcoal. I don't want a black. I want to keep the colors light. Why? Because I don't want to create power and dominance and control. So I'm going to take the emotion in the case and I'm going to create a look that's going to be more approachable, likable. So it might be tweeds jackets. It's a soft tweed in their tie, something to that where it's going to create some sort of softness within his appearance, but yet looking really polished. And I want him to look professional. I want him to be in a suit and tie.
Yeah, all good advice. Boy, thinking about that, yeah, we don't want him to look at all intimidating, but we want him to look really nice and, like you said, polished, professional. Yes, like he couldn't do what he's alleged to have done, right? Is that kind of the goal, right. Susan? Yeah. So this assault that's alleged here was brutal. This 69-year-old truck driver claims that he was in his truck and that Sanchez not only sticks his head and goes inside of the truck, coming for him, according to the truck driver, that he's so fearful he pepper sprays him. That has no effect on Mark Sanchez, according to the truck driver. And then he says when he wouldn't stop coming toward him, and this is after they were out of the vehicle, he said that's when he pulled out the knife and stabbed him multiple times to protect himself from being killed or seriously injured, so he says. This man was reportedly disfigured. According to the civil lawsuit, he's felt permanently disfigured. The hospital photo of him is hard to look at. It's dreadful. And we know there's a big age difference here. Mark Sanchez looks like a really strong guy. He was an athlete. Casey Early, let me tap into your legal expertise here. So when you hear cameras are coming in, do you think that, oh boy, should we resolve this? Or do you think it's an opportunity to go on to trial?
I always look at the case as a whole, and I have a heart-to-heart with my clients. And I always say, I don't care what you tell me, I care where the evidence takes me. Because oftentimes, in the worst light, our clients want to make themselves look good for whatever reason. So in this case, if his attorney obviously has all the evidence, and the evidence is overwhelming, this is the time where he needs to have a conversation with him and tell him the benefits of resolving this case. Because let me tell you something, just by you describing what the photos are or what they depict, that can do more harm even if he's vindicated and acquitted of the charges. And also just hearing how it started, that he could not be subdued by the pepper spray. He got out of his vehicle. Look, I see it all the time. I'm driving to Miami. You have to just drive with a prayer that you will make it to your destination safely. We know how deadly road rages blossom into something that's not expected. So again, he needs to have a real look at the evidence and make that determination that sometimes it's better to resolve than take it to trial.
Definitely, Casey. I'm in that camp. I was saying the other day on the show that, yes, he has rights, as we know, sure. He's cloaked in the presumption of innocence. He has a right to take this to trial. But there's also reality. And he's a public figure. He's been in the spotlight for a long time. He's alleged to have done something really bad. And if the world gets to see it, and if it's true, then he's gonna, I think, lose any bit of public favor that he has accumulated over the last several years, with 10 years in the NFL. You know, he's got fans in the broadcast world, and now this. I think it might be time to think about a plea. Susan, tell me, someone like Mark Sanchez, you would think he would have more awareness, right? Working in front of the cameras and being filmed for so much of his life. What do you think he may be thinking, or what should he be thinking about being filmed in December?
Well, it's hard to get into his mind without really talking to him, but I'm assuming that he thinks that he can make such a great impression and people are really going to like him. And of course, he's been on television. He's a person that people have seen many, many times over, and he's going to use that to his advantage. But to what my colleague, and I'm going to speak to that too, because I agree with her 100%. I can't tell you how many times I have cases that come across my desk, or that I meet with a client, and when I look at the evidence and I see what's going to be shown, all this discovery, I'm going, your client, you might want to consider having your client plea out, because this is not going to look pretty, because those optics are really important, and you can't unsee it once you've already seen it. It's already been implanted. So if he wants to move forward, it's kind of like the Michael Jackson case, right? Even if he were innocent, he would have lived on through the rest of his life, everyone accusing him, because he's already been tainted. So we don't really want that. If it were me, I would have suggested my client off the cameras. I also would have suggested a plea deal.
Right. I'm with you both. 6 years is the max in prison he could face if he is convicted. His pretrial hearing today. There are cameras in, so we'll see what happens today. Maybe we'll get some news that can indicate one way or the other what's going to happen. A great discussion with you wonderful ladies. Susan Constantine, Casey Early, thank you both so much. We'll see you soon. When we come back, here's what's next.
If this door doesn't open, we're going to come in. I'll be back.
The search underway this morning for the 3 masked individuals who were trying to break into someone's home.
This is the Court TV podcast.
Welcome back. Police in Alexandria, Virginia are searching for 3 masked men, masked individuals rather, who terrorized a family, all while wearing scary Halloween costumes. Take a look.
Your worst nightmare. They bang on their door. Open up the door. If this door doesn't open, we're going to come in. I'll be back.
Nothing funny about this at all. The doorbell camera footage shows the characters in creepy costumes threatening to kill the people inside of the home. The homeowner says that they threatened to break down the door with a chair and that they believe them. Police are now looking through those videos and looking at videos from other neighbors' homes nearby to try to get more information about who these 3 are. I hope they find them. I hope they charge them. Let's bring in our next guest to talk about it, law enforcement expert Sonny Slaughter on the show. Sonny, good morning to you. What was your reaction when you saw the video and heard about this story?
Good morning, Julie. Thank you for having me. I was really disturbed. This was not a prank. This was a targeted attack. This seemed to be an intentional attack. It's almost as though they had been there before. They knew about the Ring camera. There was a lot of lighting around the area. There were lights on in the neighborhood, in the other homes. So they seemed really comfortable. There were vehicles on the street in the neighborhood. You see somebody walking. So this was intentional, and this is very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. I think that law enforcement, I'm glad to see that they're really on this. I know Alexandria I know the area really well. I also know that the police department is really proficient in their investigative techniques. So I'm sure they're looking at Ring cameras, not only from that day, but previous days, to see if maybe someone was targeting them or lurking around in the neighborhood prior to this incident.
Yes, I so hope they do. Let's take a look again at that video.
Your worst nightmare. They bang on their door. Open up the door. If this door doesn't open, we're going to come in. I'm gonna be back.
This is terrifying, Sonny. I know you agree. For those homeowners inside, can you imagine? I think we can all imagine, like, what that must have been like for them, seeing those people, and they sound like men. I said earlier, I believe them. We don't know for sure because they haven't been identified, but these individuals, my goodness, how frightening.
Yeah. Julie, I was thinking that it was men too, very young, potentially, 3, maybe the shortest one might be a little younger, the one with the long black hair, but I can't imagine how terrified they felt within their home. And remember, they just had a family member, the mother, the woman is a widow. So I can't imagine what she thought. But let me tell you, these kind of pranks and these kind of incidents, what they do is cause people to firearm ready. Now, when I say firearm ready, I mean this type of attack, had it happened at someone who had a firearm, had it happened at their door, the fact that they would have defended themselves and fired outward, this is where we see this type of violence and threats. This is dangerous. People should not engage in this. This is absolutely not a prank. This is a threat. And this is a threat against an entire community, because if they felt emboldened to do this with all of the lights on in the area, with the cameras and stuff rolling, that means they would probably do something in the daytime, even if they had masks on.
Right, Sonny. You brought up a really, really excellent point with firearms and self-defense. And I was talking with someone about this and getting some questions, and I think it's worth walking through it here with you. You're someone, who works in academia as well. And so with just looking at them in the yard, and that looks choreographed, how they're standing by each other, they're making the movements. Someone in the home would not be allowed to shoot. You can't shoot to defend your property like that. Bright line rule. If you take a gun safety class, you're going to learn that. However, let's say when one of them was jiggling the door, let's just say he got in. Let's say the door's loose. He puts one foot in that home, then, Sonny, it's boom, 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 and we've got a homicide, right? And it would be justified, would it not?
Right, it would be. It's game on. And even if the homeowner said, listen, I have a gun, I have a weapon. If you do not leave, I will fire. Now, they can't fire. They shouldn't fire, because the threat has to be imminent, and they have to be in immediate and imminent danger, which means they do have to cross over that threshold. You should not just be automatically firing outside of your door. But the terror that they must have felt. Police arrived after, but it is really important that we inform people that they should not be doing this. And people that have guns shouldn't just automatically fire out.
Right. And these 3 are lucky they didn't get shot, because there are some people who, wouldn't necessarily know the law like you and I do, and might have just been frightened and responded. I wish we had more time to talk. We are out of time, but Sonny Slaughter, always a delight to have you. Thank you so much for weighing in on this. We'll see you soon. We'll be right back. That's all for this episode of Opening Statements, my friends. I'm your host, Julie Grant, and it's been great being with you. On this show, I am calling out any pants on fire moments in our big trials and true crime stories, and I want you to come along with me. Opening Statements is live every weekday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern on Court TV. Thank you for downloading this episode. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. You can watch past shows anytime you like on CourtTV.com.